Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Gaurav Kumawat, coordinator of IBEC. For the second talk of our APSD talk series, which is a talk series by pursuers of the Doctorate of Philosophy who are learning the frontiers of various fields of astronomy and astrophysics from leading institutions. Today, we have with us Mr. Arun Rana. Welcome, sir. Before we start with the talk, I would like to give a short introduction of the speaker. Mr. Arun Rana is a IPSD scholar under the supervision of Dr. Sukanta Panda and Dr. Sebastian Wooster. Department of Physics, IISER Bhopal. In his MS thesis, he worked on cosmological perturbation theory, which helps us understand the universe large scale structure and the formation of galaxies and galaxy clusters. In his PhD, he worked on inflation, which is a theory of the exponential expansion of space in the early universe. Quantum fluctuations from this era acted as the seeds for the growth of the structure of the universe. Currently, he is working on analog gravity models and using Bose-Einstein condensate as a medium to construct an analog spacetime in the laboratory. These models can help us explore the experimental aspects of the systems governed by general relativistic gravitational fields, for example, black holes, and that are not available directly due to our practical limitations. And today he will be giving a talk titled Cosmological Evolution, a journey into the past, present, and the future of the universe. We will be having the Q&A session at the end of the talk. You can keep posting your questions in the chat box and we will take note of those questions. And now I welcome sir to take over from here.
Hello everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the coordinators for inviting me to give a talk. The title of my talk is Cosmological Evolution, and during the evolution, the talk will be like a journey into the past, present, and future of our universe. So here is the overview of my talk. First, I'll give a brief introduction about cosmology, and then I will discuss a brief history, how the cosmology has evolved throughout the time. Then I'll discuss what do we study in modern and observational cosmology. Then I'll discuss the Big Bang Theory model and the evolution of the universe. Then we will see that how much far in the past can we look at and what about the future? Does it end anywhere for our universe? Then I'll be discussing the references. So, cosmology is the study of origin and evolution of our universe, from starting from Big Bang to recent times and to the future as well. You can also call it that this is a scientific study of large-scale properties of the universe as a whole. So in cosmology, we try to answer the questions like how the universe was began and what is the current state it is in and what does the future holds for us. The scale that in cosmology we deal with is of the order of 100 to 300 megaparsec, where 1 parsec is the distance that even the light takes 3.26 years to cover. Now, at such a huge scale, the universe looks isotropic and homogeneous. This is also called as cosmological principle. What do we mean by isotropy is, for example, if you are standing somewhere, isotropy means there is no preferred direction in the universe, for example, on a cosmological scale. So if you are standing somewhere and you have a photon detector, then in the photon detector you see that you find that 3 photons are coming from the direction of from your opposite direction towards you. Your photon detector detects 3 photons. Then if you turn around by 90 degree, that means to your left, and still you try to detect the photons using the same detector, then you will find that 3 photons still come from that direction as well. So there is no specific direction. And the homogeneity means that there is no predefined origin in the universe as well. For example, if you're like the example that I gave just now, you can do the same measurement in going some other galaxy. For example, let's suppose you go to Andromeda galaxy and you do the same measurement, then you will find that similar number of photons will be coming towards you as well. So this is called homogeneity. So combined, this is called cosmological principle. Now, a brief history about cosmology. So how did it all started? So Aristotle was the first one who established the basic tenets of geocentrism. Geocentrism means Earth is at the center of the entire universe and all the heavenly bodies are revolving around it. But he was not successful because of the giving very small details. Then Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century was the first one who standardized the geocentric system, and the system was called as Ptolemaic system. Now this was the prevailing theory till 16th century. Then 16th century, Nicholas Copernicus and subsequently John Kepler and Galileo Galilei were the ones who proposed the heliocentric system. Heliocentric system is Sun is at the center of the universe and not Earth, and all the heavenly bodies, including Earth, are revolving around Sun. And Newton's law was the first law which could be applied on these bodies and which could also give a mechanism for Kepler's laws. Now these are the two illustrations. First one is by Portuguese cosmographer and cartographer Bartolomeu Vallo in 1568. The illustration shows that Earth is at the center, and all the different circular orbits that you can see at that time, all the other bodies were supposed to be revolving around this thing, around Earth. So in the, I think it's not clearly visible, but in the orbits, the name of the few of the planets are written. Mercury is there, Venus is there, Sun is there, Mars, and similarly in the next illustration, which was by Andreas Celarius, Copernicus system is showed, where Sun is at the center and not Earth, and all the Earth, including other bodies, revolving around Sun. So these are like a few of the initial illustrations. Now, the current cosmology is known as modern and observational cosmology. In modern cosmology, started in 1917 with Albert Einstein's publication Cosmological Consideration of General Theory of Relativity. So general theory of relativity is a theory of gravitation which explains, which gives a mechanism how the gravitational forces works. Then the William de Sitter, Carl Schwarzschild, and Arthur Eddington were few of the peoples who explored its astronomical and cosmological ramifications. In 1922, Friedman was the one who introduced the idea of an expanding universe that contained moving matter. Now, in 1927, Big Bang model was proposed by George Lemaitre, which was later confirmed by Hubble's discovery of redshift in 1929 and also in 1964 by CMBR discovery by Arno Penzias and Robert Woodrow. So what Hubble discovered was that Hubble took the measurement of the galaxies moving away from us. When he took the measurement, he found out that all the galaxies are moving away from us and with a velocity which was proportional to their distance. So this was known as Hubble's law, and the constant of proportionality here was known as Hubble's constant. Now, the Big Bang and the evolution of the universe. So I'll be discussing this image in detail in next slides. So what is Big Bang? The Big Bang theory is actually a cosmological model of the observable universe from the earliest known period. It is also called a standard model. It describes how the universe has expanded from an initial state of high density and temperature. It is also compatible with Hubble's law that I explained just a few minutes earlier, which states that farthest galaxies are moving away with the most speed. Now, when you extrapolate the expansion backward in time, that will lead to a very high density state, which will be preceded by singularity. Because when you go back in time, if currently everything is going away from us, then if you go back in time, you will see that all the galaxies and matter will be clubbed together into a state of very high density, and the temperature will of course be very high. So that yeah. So, but we do not have any evidence of any phenomena prior to that singularity. The current age of the universe is 13.8 billion years. Now, after the initial expansion, the universe cooled sufficiently to allow the formation of subatomic particles, and those subatomic particles formed giant clouds, then which later converted into mostly hydrogen with some of heliums, and these all things later coalesced into using gravity, forming early stars and galaxies. Thus, the galaxy formation started. Now we will look at the chronology of the universe with the timeline. Okay, the image shows the timeline of space expansion. Now, initially there were some quantum fluctuations. Then those quantum fluctuations, then there was an era of inflation which took place, which is which is actually exponential expansion which occurred in the very early universe. Now, the very early universe is the part where this Planck epoch was there. Planck epoch is the smallest amount of time in which we can go. So at that scale, the energy scale is very high. So we do not have, so our physical laws break down at that place. So we do not know what happened before the Planck epoch. So just after the Planck epoch, inflation was there. Inflation is the exponential expansion of the space, and the tiny ripples during this very early stage of the universe, they are the ones which led to the current large scale structure of the universe. What do we mean by large scale structure of the universe? Means there are like the formation of galaxies, galactic clusters, what is the current state universe is in, all these things. Then came the state of the early universe. Now in early universe, formation of various kind of subatomic particles started taking place. Neutrinos decoupled from the elementary particles which were placed at that time, and the primordial black hole formation took place. Primordial black holes are those black holes which are supposed to form in the very early stage of the universe. Now, in that stage, the protons started to fuse with neutrons and started creating heavier elements like deuterium and then helium-4, and the photons which were decoupled at that time. So, at that moment, at that time, um thermal equilibrium was there and no other photons were being created. So, those photons which were there, they decoupled from the uh, from the matter uh, from the matter that we had at that time. They are even detected today. They are detected today and they are known as cosmic microwave background radiation. So these are the oldest observation of the universe that we can see today as well. Now, after the early universe, the era was of the dark ages. So the dark ages is that era when no new source of light was created. Only just CMBR photons, cosmic microwave background radiation photons were there, and all the other formation of earliest generation of stars, galaxies, and galaxy clusters and superclusters over the time took place. The dark age ended at 1 billion years, and the universe is what we see at the present day. So, if we just look into this image, first we see that there are some quantum fluctuations in the beginning. And then the inflation took place, which is known as exponential expansion. Then the green and blue plot, if you see in the figure, then you will see that this is known as CMBR, cosmic microwave background radiation. Then after that, there is this era of dark ages. So dark ages is that era when no matter creation was taking place, only just no photons were being created. Only matter was being created, of course, but no photon was being created. Only the photons from the CMB were there. Now, even if when we look back into the time, the oldest time that we can look back are those CMB photons. We cannot look what was beyond those photons, because those are the ones before that everything was vague. So only those are the photons that we receive today. So how does the universe appears today? So the universe, when the dark age ended, when the it was about 1 billion years old. So from that time onwards to till today, not much has changed. The thin disk and the galaxy in which we live, the Milky Way galaxy, it began to form when the universe was about 5 billion years, and the solar system was formed about 9.2 billion years. And currently, the universe is going under accelerated expansion, and that under accelerated expansion is to be caused by dark energy. What is dark energy? I'll just explain in a few slides. So these are the two images that you can see. So first image shows the peak brightness of red giant in the distant galaxy. So these are not stars, these are actually galaxies, and the bright objects that you can see, they are actually the red giants in the center of these galaxies. So I put these images just to show that we are working on the scales where these galaxies, even the galaxy looks very small. And even the next image, the second image that you see here, it represents a wide portrait of distant universe, and this contains roughly nearly 265,000 galaxies. So the scale is so huge when we work in cosmology. So currently, the component of the universe, there are three components. One is dark energy, which is nearly 71.4%, and dark matter is there, which is 24%, and visible matter, which is atom I've written here, which is 4.6%. Now, the atoms, the visible matter, these are the building block of all the stars and the planets. So you can see currently the whatever universe that is visible to us, that only forms the 4.6% of the entire universe. The remaining 95% approx is not visible to us. The 24% of this is dark matter. Dark matter is the one which does not emit or absorb light. It's only been detected directly by its gravitational effects. Now the dark energy is 72% in the universe, and it is of course distinct from dark matter and is responsible for the present day acceleration of the universal expansion. Now, what will happen to the future in the universe? See, we have seen in the past that how we have evolved. We started from the quantum fluctuation, then the era of inflation was there, then the CMB photons that we detect here, then the dark ages were there, then the formation of the stars which was taking place, then we started getting light from those sources as well. Then there was the development of galaxies, planets, etc. And currently the universe is dark energy dominated, and the universe's expansion is being accelerated. Now, hmm, so what will happen to the future? Now, currently we have seen also the matter that we have seen are the dark energy, dark matter, and atoms. Now, what will happen to the future of the universe? Now, there are the following possible scenarios which can happen. Uh, One of them is big freeze can happen. Big freeze is actually the continuous expansion of in the universe that will asymptotically reach absolute zero. See, initially when we started, the temperature was very, very huge because everything was very clubbed together and the density was very high. So that expansion started, and the things started to cool down, and eventually what will happen one day, the every universe will reach the absolute zero temperature. So currently if you measure the temperature in the universe, you still get the CMB photons coming from all the directions. So the temperature approximately is 2.7 Kelvin. So if the expansions are kept on taking place, eventually you will get an absolute zero temperature. Also, one of the scenarios is heat death can take place. So what do we mean by heat death is that a time will come when your universe will reach a state of maximum entropy. See, from the second law of thermodynamics, we know that the entropy of the universe, entropy always increases. So one day what can happen is the entropy of the universe will reach its maximum value, and then everything will be uh, everything will just stop because there will be no energy to drive any more motion in the universe, and everything will just stop. This is called as heat death. Now the third thing that can happen is also known as big rip. Big rip is actually a steady increase in the Hubble constant, which defines a rate of acceleration of the universe. Now, as I described earlier, Hubble constant is found from the Hubble's law, which states that velocity of galaxy are proportional to the distance. Veloc the two galaxies which are separated by a distance d, they are going away from each other with a velocity v. Then the velocity is proportional to their distance between them. Then the Hubble constant is known as the proportionality constant. So that Hubble constant, if keeps on increasing, what will happen one day? Everything will just keep on going away from each other, and if the Hubble constant reaches infinity, it will lead to disintegrating everything, and nothing will be left except the empty void. And the fourth scenario that can happen is Big Crunch. Now, Big Crunch is a hypothesis which is based on a symmetric view of the ultimate fate of the universe. This theory assumes that average density of the universe will be enough to stop its expansion, and a universe will begin contracting and end it into a dimensionless singularity. So recent evidence suggests this scenario is unlikely but has not been ruled out yet due to measurement being unavailable for only a short period of time. So these are few of the four scenarios which can happen in the future. So if we were an immortal being, we might observe one of these to occur in the future, but we are not. So let's hope what will happen to the universe in the future. Okay. And one more thing I wanted to point out is also the cause of this inflation we have not known yet, that what causes the inflation yet, and there are many more open problems that one can work on with. Yeah. So these are my references, and if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Thank you, sir. That was a very informative talk. Now we can move on to the question and answer session. So I will dictate all the questions. So first of all, Dipan Battle asked, does the expansion of the universe bring about any change in the elasticity of the space-time?
Uh, okay. I don't think it does. Yeah, I don't think it does.
Okay.
Because expansion is actually manifest into the space-time itself. So I don't think it does. So next question.
Yeah. So next question is from Devang. He's asking, can you please explain how these primordial black holes might have formed?
Mhm. Well, this is an open problem. People are working on it, how these were formed in the beginning. So if people are interested, maybe they can start working on this. It's a good question, of course.
Okay.
Hmm.
Next question is from Tushar. Do we know how was the very first quanta of light is created?
Just a minute, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Uh, you see, the first photons that we get is from CMB. Just a minute, huh? Let me just take to those slides back. Hmm. So when the inflation happened, only field was there, scalar field. So after the scalar field, this reheating process started. In the reheating process, the particle formation was started. So all the everything that is there, even the matter and everything, it is supposed to be formed after the inflation, at the end of the inflation. So the there are models which states that inflation was driven by a scalar field. So there's a possibility that that scalar field has caused the like all the visible matter, photons, everything that is there after the inflation. Yeah, most probably it was the field that caused the inflation.
Okay. Should I move to the next question?
Yes, yes.
So what I meant to ask is there any theory related to how the first photon came into existence? Like you told that it evolved from the scalar field
Yes.
around the time of CMB. So is there any direct theory that approaches how exactly it was created?
See, when we talk about that much energy scale, we will have to go into quantum field theory approach at that scale. So what will happen that scale is there was a field which caused the inflation, and that is the field which was there. Suppose if you work on a scalar field model, then there is a scalar field which at the end of the inflation will cause everything like the matter particles that we have, even the photons. So most probably, I think because if you read it in QED also, then you can see that um, like when the interaction is there, photons are created. Even the electrons, protons, electrons and positrons, when they collide, then you will get two photons in that case. So most probably, I think you can like direct. You can from that theory you can find it out.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So next question is from Skun Tiwari. How did we come to make a distinction between dark matter and dark energy?
Okay. Hmm. See what first the dark matter was observed. Okay. So how the dark matter was found? People they studied one galaxy. They studied the rotation of a galaxy. Okay, when they studied the rotation of a galaxy and they used their known laws of physics. For example, just finding the rotation of the galaxy, you can just apply the Newton's law there. You can apply that mv square by r terms, and then you find out that that law does not explain your rotational curve of a galaxy, the way it is being rotated, but it explains that curve only when you add some extra mass into the galaxy. That extra mass was called as the dark matter, and then there were some indirect evidences also that there is some matter is there which causes this rotation of the galaxy. And the other kind of observations were there, for example, the gravitational lensing was there. uh, because of that also people found that there's some matter is there which we cannot see, but due to its gravitational effect they were able to observe that something is there. That's how they defined this dark matter. Okay, then for the dark energy what happened was, uh, universe is expanding. Okay, so they need a mechanism to find the expansion of the universe, that how this expansion is taking place. So for that, even including the dark matter didn't work out, because including the dark matter just explains the on the level of the galaxies it explains, but it does not explain how the like why the universe is expanding. Then people assume that we have a constituent in the universe. They named it as dark energy. We do not have any evidence of this. They named it as dark energy. They use it into our, for example, Einstein equations. They used it into there, and then they find out that the expansion could be explained. So the scale is different here. Do you see? The scale for the dark matter is different, and the scale for dark energy is different. Even when you incorporate all the dark matter which is there in the universe, it does not explain the expansion taking place in the universe. So you have to include another factor there into our, like for example, equation of motions, which is Einstein equation, and then we find out that yes, some other constituent is there, which they termed as dark energy. We do not know what it is, and it is the one which is causing the accelerated expansion. Is that fine?
Okay, thank you, sir. Uh, next question is similar to this one. So that is by Surendra. He is asking, how can we say if something is dark matter or black hole?
Hmm. Okay. See, there are black holes which have like, so how does a black hole is formed after the star, after the death of a star. Okay, and the dark matter we do not have any knowledge about it. For the black holes we know that uh, about the black holes we know a few things. We also know that how the light behaves around this. Yeah, see the black holes. You can also see that near the event horizon of the black holes you will always find light, but in the dark matter case we do not know that yet, because what can be dark matter we have no idea about it. So that's how you can differentiate it, because for the black hole case you can like there are ways to detect whether there is a black hole or not. Okay, for the dark matter case that is not there.
Yes, thank you. The next question is from Dipan Bethel. He is asking, is there some kind of Planck epoch occurring for black holes beyond the event horizon, thus bringing some kind of time flow in the black hole?
See, in black hole what happens is, uh, our space-time curves because of a very high. See, one difference that I can think of is when the Planck epoch occurred in the very beginning of the universe. So the Planck epoch signifies a very high energy scale where our laws of physics does not apply. Okay, beyond that we cannot go. And in black hole, what happens is our space-time gets curved, and it gets curved up to such a huge scale that we do not know what is happening beyond the event horizon. But inside the event horizon of a black hole, we have the geodesic equations and all. We can see that everything will go to its singularity. But beyond that Planck, inside that Planck epoch, we do not know anything yet. So does that answer your question?
Um, so if there is any follow-up about this answer, you can speak up. Deepak. Okay, so we can move to the next question. So next question is from Akshat Gaur. He is asking, where does the energy will go when the universe ends?
Okay. Well, universe will end because there will be no more energy left.
Yes.
So since there is no more energy left, where will it go if nothing is left there?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
next question is from Om Singh Vashishta. He is asking, what is star more than being luminous? Explain with respect. Um, I am not able to understand this. So what is star more than being luminous? Okay. Om, can you please speak up?
Okay. Let me read it then.
So actually, because means a core of a planet is also luminous as thought, and if I'm saying that stars are mainly made up of gases and lighter elements, and if any planet is big enough, then its core can be act as a star element, star as.
Hmm. See, that will depend on how like like there are two questions. Okay, how a star is formed, how a planet is formed. First of all, okay. So if star, well, I do not know about the formation of the planet, so I don't know that. Like I know that there will be gaseous cloud, they will get cooled down and all. Then in the core there might be some materials which are earlier were there, they just get in core because of the rotation, heat is produced and all. And in the star, what happens is star is like the entirely it is made of gases, and everything is just like all the hydrogen and helium, so whatever material initially they are there, they just combine with nuclear fusion and all, they just and they like generate energy, and they continuously do that. But in case of a planet, outside layer is like uh, it gets cooled down like earlier than its core. Eventually core will also die out even one day. So
So
The
I
next
guess in the core, so maybe like in the core of a star, we there is fusion reaction going on while it is not there in the planet. So maybe that can be a distinction between the two.
yeah, maybe. I'm not sure, but maybe, yeah.
And second
the next
question from, okay, you can
the,
speak up.
in this how the limits of observable universe people decided.
Yeah, so there are two things going on actually in this question. So one thing is you take light, okay? You take the light, you know the currently, you know the speed of light, right? And you know the current age of the universe. What do? Is we just multiply the speed of light with the age of the universe. Then you can say that we can see up to this extent at a but this will be the case of a static universe if our universe is not expanding. But if the universe is expanding, we have to incorporate the expansion factor as well. So that is how, so actually if we do that, so the see current age, as I have written in my this slides, the current age of the universe is approximately 13 billion years. Okay, so if you multiply 13 billion years by c, you get a size. Okay, so that size will give you that the size of the universe, observable universe, which it should be. But it's not like that. The observable universe is greater than that. That is because the expansion is also taking place. So we have to incorporate that expansion as well, and eventually it turns out that the observable universe that we see is greater than the the size which we get directly from multiplying the speed of light with the age of the universe,
Okay.
and that is because of the expansion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Next is from Roshan. He is asking, is the dark matter and dark energy interconvertible using the mass energy equivalence?
Not mass energy equivalent, but there are like people are working on this kind of theory models, which state that there is a possibility that dark matter and dark energy might be converting into each other. So, but we are not sure. So it's an open question. Yes, they may be, they might not be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next is Tushar. If you believe in the multiverse theory, so is there any other possible way to communicate to other universe? I guess if you want to, if you want to answer that. This is outside the maybe scope of
Yeah.
this talk.
Let me think. Let me think. Okay. If you can somehow break your space time in such a way that the other side, like for example black hole and white hole scenarios, like there are theories which states that they are both converting, from one side is black hole, other side is white hole. So maybe if somehow you survive after going inside a black hole, and then other side of a black hole is a wormhole, these are all like theories, science fiction. So if the other side of the black hole is wormhole and you survive somehow there also, there's a possibility that you might end up into some other, either into a place with our universe or some other universe. We do not know yet.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was an interesting answer. Next is Deepan again. Does expansion of the universe cause any changes in the black hole radiation by entanglement entropy?
See, effect of actually expansion. When we talk about expansion, the scale becomes very huge. Okay, then so studying the even if you take a case of a, like if you suppose, just forget about the black holes for now. Even if you want to study the effect of expansion in our solar system is of course very big. Okay, so even if you want to look at the effect of the expansion on our solar system, you won't be finding much, because expansion is taking place at a very large scale. At a small scale, its effect is not there that much. Even when you study about the black holes and all, you do not incorporate the expansion of the space-time taking place, because the effect is very small. So I do not think that it will be like affecting very much. There's a possibility that little bit, very little, it may affect, but it's not like a huge effect will not be there. So whenever you study the systems, like like for example, those people who work in astrophysics, who deal with the black hole horizons and all, black hole thermodynamics, they also do not incorporate the expansion effect into their theories, because the effect is very small. But yeah, if you really want to go into the minute details, maybe you will get, because it's not exactly zero. Expansion will be there, very small though, but it will be there. So if you want to do that, maybe you will get very small, but yeah.
Thank you. Next question is from Riddhiman. Is there any theory regarding how supermassive black holes at the center of most galaxies were formed, since they were way too massive to have been formed by a stellar collapse?
Yeah, see this. Oh, yeah, formation of these primordial black holes and supermassive black holes, it's like it's not that well known. So people are working on these things. Maybe if you guys if you guys start working, maybe you guys can find out the answers. It will help us also. So let's hope that we get these answers soon.
Okay, thank you. So these were all the questions in the chat box. If there is any other question, you can speak up.
Okay, one more thing. Like if you guys have any more questions, you can write me an email, and I'll try to answer as much as I can.
Yes, we can wait for some minutes, and like if there
Yes,
are no
yes.
more questions, we can end the meeting.
Also, I'd like to thank all of you for attending this talk, and coordinators for like inviting me for the talk.
thank you everyone for attending the talk and for your time. And thank you, sir, for such an informative talk.